On this day in 1937, Jimmy McGrory played his last match for Celtic. None of the 12,000 crowd who attended Celtic's Division 1 match against Queen's Park on the 16th of October 1937 were aware on the day that they were witnessing the great Jimmy McGrory's final match for Celtic. The interwar years, despite seeing McGrory make himself the most feared striker in football, had been a time of struggle for Celtic, whose league title win in season 1935-36 had been their first in 10 years. Only a solitary championship for Motherwell in 1931-32 had prevented Rangers equalling Celtic's 6-in-a-row record, and if not for that, their 1934-35 win would have been their 9th in a row. The appointment of the legendary Jimmy McMenemy as first-team coach in 1934 had seen an upturn in Celtic's fortunes, but as the club approached its 50th anniversary in 1937-38, they had already fallen behind league leaders Rangers, who won the Glasgow Cup on the day of McGrory's final match. So far that season, there had been home and away draws with Queen of the South, a 2-1 defeat to Kilmarnock at Rugby Park, a 3-1 loss at Ibrox, and a 2-0 defeat to Arbroath at Gayfield. Things were not looking good. With captain Willie Lyon and Jimmy Delaney missing through injuries picked up at Gayfield, Celtic lined up against Queen's Park. Kennaway, Hogg, Morrison, Geetins, Miller, Patterson, Crum, MacDonald, McGrory, Buchan, Murphy. Queen's Park's goalkeeper was Desmond White, son of Celtic's chairman Tom White, who would become a Celtic director on his father's death in 1947 and replaced Robert Kelly as chairman in 1971. His son Chris was a Celtic director from 1981 until Fergus McCann's takeover in 1994. Queen's Park started strongly as Celtic struggled in the absence of Lyon and Delaney, and they took the lead on 12 minutes. Jimmy McGrory scored the last of his 398 league goals for Celtic a minute later. Desmond White misjudging a cross from Johnny Crum, and McGrory headed powerfully into the net. Queen's Park took the lead again, Martin scoring his second with a header from a tight angle. Before half-time, Celtic were level again, Malky MacDonald driving home a shot from the edge of the penalty area. Celtic went into the lead for the first time when Johnny Crum, who would replace McGrory as centre-forward but was struggling at outside right that day, outpaced the defence to slide the ball past White. Then a Frank Murphy shot was deflected off Gordon, with most of the newspapers listing it as an own goal to make it 4-2. Queen's Park weren't quite finished yet though, and Kyle reduced the deficit, heading in from a late corner kick. By then, Jimmy McGrory had left the field injured. It wasn't unusual for Jimmy McGrory to be injured, being the target for rough treatment every week at a time when defenders were allowed far more leeway than they are today. McGrory could have scored another 100 goals for Celtic if he hadn't spent so much time out with injuries, but at the age of 33, it was all beginning to catch up with him, and he never played football again. From a seemingly difficult situation in October, Celtic went on a strong winning run and were confirmed as champions with a 3-1 win away to St Mirren on the 23rd of April 1938 in time for the big celebrations of their 50th anniversary in May. They added to this the Empire Exhibition Trophy in June with a 1-0 win over Everton in the final. But Jimmy McGrory was not there to be part of it. A few days before Christmas in 1937, he left Celtic to take up the post of secretary-manager at Kilmarnock. Willie Maley insisted on a condition of the move being that McGrory retired as a player and Celtic retained his registration to ensure he could not turn out for his new club. John Kearney writes in his biography of McGrory, "Heroes are forever." Just before Christmas 1937, he walked out of Celtic Park, symbolically leaving his jersey hanging on its peg in the dressing room and his famous size 6 football boots in the care of Jimmy Gribben in the boot room, remarking, "I'll never use them again." McGrory's transition from player to manager does not show Willie Maley in a good light. McGrory brought Kilmarnock to Celtic Park on Christmas Day and they were beaten 8-0, Kearney writing, On Christmas Day 1937, he took his seat in the away director's box and received a tremendous cheer from the Celtic fans. He was touched but uneasy about the applause and, on his own admission, felt a little uncomfortable in his new seat. He was even more uncomfortable at half-time as Celtic went in leading 6-0. McGrory had to go to the visitors' dressing room at Celtic Park, a place he had hardly seen, and try to lift a team he had only known for a few days. In the other dressing room, Maley was telling his side, "Don't let sentiment interfere with your play. I want the same again in this half." Celtic went out and added another 3 goals just to rub it in. It was one of the odder ways for Maley to celebrate his 50-year association with Celtic, the public humiliation of one of its legends. It was actually only 2 goals Celtic scored in the second half, and against this, the Scotsman match report of the 27th of December 1937 noted, "While Celtic scored 8 goals, the score could have been bigger, as they eased up very noticeably in the second half." A few months later, on the 5th of March 1938, McGrory brought Kilmarnock back again and knocked Celtic out of the Scottish Cup with a 2-1 win. Kearney wrote of this occasion, "The Killie victory over Celtic was rather soured by Maley's boorish behaviour afterwards. He refused to shake hands with McGrory, and when the latter went to the office to say farewell, Maley didn't even look up from his desk, ostensibly engrossed in paperwork." Kilmarnock knocked Rangers out of the Cup with a 4-3 victory at Hampden in the semi-final, but lost the final to 2nd Division East Fife after a replay. Season 1937-38 turned out to be one of the best in Celtic's history to that point, but it also saw the temporary parting of the ways with their greatest goalscorer. Jimmy McGrory scored an astonishing 472 goals in 445 League and Scottish Cup appearances and a combined 550 goals in 547 matches for Celtic, and was twice the top scorer in all of Europe in 1926-27 and 1935-36. Due to Celtic's long, slow decline through the 20s and 30s, he only won 3 league championships and 5 Scottish Cups, as well as 4 Glasgow Cups. Nicknamed the Human Torpedo on account of the number of diving headers he scored, he only ever took 3 penalties and missed 2 of them, so only one of his 472 goals came from the spot. Jimmy McGrory could have been a rich man if he had signed for Arsenal in 1928, but their manager, Herbert Chapman, told a disgruntled Willie Maley, "Mr Maley, if we offered this lad the crown jewels and next year's output of the Royal Mint, we'd still not get him. I think the deal's off." McGrory himself said, "McGrory of Arsenal just didn't sound as good as McGrory of Celtic." A furious Celtic board, eager to bank the world record transfer fee of £10,000 Arsenal had offered, responded by cutting his wages, and for the rest of his career he was spitefully paid less than the rest of his teammates. When McGrory later found this out, he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, it was worth it just to pull on those green and white hoops." Jimmy McGrory lived and breathed Celtic for a lifetime, but he wasn't just a Celtic great. Even to the present day, his scoring record makes him one of the greatest strikers in football history.